The state of Texas is suing a New York doctor for prescribing abortion pills to a woman who lives near Dallas.
He's trying to scare everyone in America from providing basic care to women.
This is a really important case, and it's probably going to go really high up the circuit, if not to the Supreme Court. So what happened was we had a mother in Texas who was about 9 weeks along pregnant. And as most of you remember, Texas law currently is a heartbeat bill. So that means that about 6 weeks, anything after 6 weeks, once you can detect the fetal heartbeat, no more abortion, which is great. And it has saved tens of thousands of lives, documented, legit. So this mother was about 9 weeks along. She ended up seeking an abortion via telemedicine from an abortionist in New York State, which obviously has no restrictions on abortion, even up to being delivered alive post-abortion. So she was 9 weeks along. She takes mifepristone, misoprostol, the abortion drug regimen, approved by the FDA, as the media loves to tell us. She ends up hemorrhaging, no surprise, and she's in the ER. The father of the baby who died, the father didn't die, the baby died. The father didn't even know she was pregnant until after they stabilized the mother and said, by the way, she was 9 weeks along, and this was the result of abortion drugs. Jeez. The father alerted the authorities. And Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, has brought suit against this doctor in New York. The abortionist is Margaret Daly Carpenter. She is not licensed in Texas. She is not allowed to prescribe prescriptions in Texas or states outside of the one in which she is licensed as a doctor, New York. And in normal circumstances, this would be a case for extradition. If you violate a law in one state, you flee to another state, or you live in another state, the state that in which you committed the crime, you can be called back and you should be extradited. That's how the states work together. However, in June of 2023, New York State became what they called a sanctuary state for doctors who violate medical law or any law in other states regarding abortion and the dispensation of abortion drugs. This is called a shield law. And it allows doctors in New York to prescribe and send abortion pills via mail to patients in states that have abortion restrictions, including Texas. And actually, when Governor Hochul signed this law signed the bill into law, she actually singled out Texas as the state that she had in mind as she was signing this bill. So yeah, it does feel, I think you mentioned, Tom, it feels intentional. In some ways, this doctor, this quote unquote doctor, the abortionist in question, she is the head of an organization that advocates for the expansion of abortion pills, abortion drugs being sent into all states with restrictions. So this is actually her industry and her cause of life. And so, yeah, it does feel intentionally set up. New York doctors have been doing this in documented cases ever since the Dobbs decision dropped. This is just the one that finally got the authorities, and Ken Paxton is bringing suit. So it's going to challenge the shield law that New York has. These shield laws are terrible for interstate relationships. It's basically saying, like, you can violate these states' laws and we'll protect you. We won't extradite you. And it's a terrible precedent, not just in the question of abortion and the rights of the unborn, but it sets the precedent for all kinds of interstate quarrels and tensions. And I'm sure Josh can speak more to that, but this is a big case. And here's to Ken Paxton. Love that guy.
Yeah, there's rumors that Ken Paxton's thinking about,
running at Cornyn, right?
Yeah, in the primary. We'll see if that happens. But
we need Cornyn
again, so many of these reports, by the mainstream left-wing newspapers, they failed to kind of bring up the fact that there was a woman that ended up in the ER hemorrhaging. And you have to ask yourself, if you read about this story and you didn't hear about this woman that was rushed to the ER for hemorrhaging, why is it that the corporate media decided to not disclose that fact, which would be obviously very pertinent because that was cited as a reason and rationale for why Ken Paxton's going after this and suing this doctor?
Yeah. And I think, too, that the coverage absolutely fails for all sorts of reasons. And we've talked about how the reproductive health, quote unquote, industry just gets a free pass when it comes to scrutiny from the scientific community about the effects on women. We know that abortion kills the baby. Like, we're not passing that over. But in this case, Texas law requires not only that doctors prescribing medicine in Texas be licensed in Texas, which you'd think, oh, that's a common sense, Yeah, that makes sense. Protects the woman. But also, when it comes to mifepristone, misoprostol, they require in Texas an in-person visit. Why is this, you might ask? Well, because taking those drugs, if you have an ectopic pregnancy or if you're prescribed those drugs, they can be used to help manage miscarriage after the baby has passed. But if they give you the wrong amount, if they don't give you enough or they give you too much, you can end up with hemorrhaging or whatever is causing the miscarriages to go untreated. So it absolutely makes sense for women and for the concern for the patient in this case that a doctor would have to see them in person. The fact that you can prescribe these drugs over telehealth in any state in America is just unconscionable.
It's activism over care. I mean, because the
It
people
is.
that actually sought to roll back, that actually used to be law everywhere. You had to meet with someone because
Right.
the obvious
Until
implication is
the FDA relaxed the restrictions.
exactly
under
because
pressure,
the
right?
original people actually sounding the alarm on the abortion pill was feminists, liberal feminists in the 60s, because people were dying from bleeding out taking these quote unquote medications. But if the fact that you can bleed out, it certainly suggests that you might want to consult a doctor or be closely monitored. That would be appropriate care. But of course, because this is all about activism, not actually about treating women, certainly not the child, it can literally cause a death. And that's what this boyfriend in this situation found out. He didn't even know she was pregnant. All of a sudden started bleeding out. That's just insane to me. You could be taking a drug like this. Now, questions that I have, there's obviously all the personal problems with this, and it feels like it was a long train coming. We were going to come to a head at some point because the activism's gotten so extreme and states are taking different stances on this. It feels like it was almost intentionally set up to reach the Supreme Court. So I know that kind of makes some people shudder because it is pretty politically unpopular to go against abortion pills and different varieties, mifepristone, misoprostol. It's kind of been tried before. It makes Republicans a little bit queasy. Do you see any proper resolution to this on a political level, Josh?
I don't know. It's going to, right now, there's a tendency amongst the Trump administration to kind of slow the roll on a lot of this stuff. They don't want to try to talk about this issue. But I assume so long as, this is making its way through the court systems, they're like, well, we're just going to let the courts decide on this stuff and they're going to defer. So they're not, dealing with it on their end of it. But you're still going to have some of these issues come up when you're talking about, the Department of Health and Human Services. And the whole point that we like to make is when, you're talking about someone like Bobby Kennedy Jr., he's had problems with the way that a lot of medicines have been, approved. And we would just say, like, hey, it's time to look at the way things get approved. And we should never have, some sort of an abortion get out of free card where if it deals with abortion that you don't want health and safety. I mean, of course, we think, if it kills the baby, we don't like it anyway. But even if you take aside that argument for the sake of this, it's like, is it still healthy for the actual woman to take, or is there a risk of hemorrhaging? And it's like, we get accused as pro-lifers of being the ones that are like, oh, well, you're just, you're ideological about it. Really? We're the ones ideological about it? You would think women who are supporting abortion would be like, this isn't the best policy for us because it would, this isn't the best prescription because so many women bleed out. But they're like, they want to sort of democratize and privatize abortion. They don't want to have it so that people go to an abortion clinic, facility, whatever, and have a doctor deal with it. They love the idea that they could send pills to anyone in the whole country, anyone in the world.
Dealing out death.
Yeah. Again, as you said, Erica, it's the people who are in the abortion industry. They care a lot about money. They don't care about women.
Yeah. The absolute lack of care and compassion is stunning. So, yeah, hopefully this Texas thing puts an end to these shield laws. This is an interstate issue, so I think it has to go to the federal level at some point. I don't think Trump's going to be able to avoid that.